So far-left outlet Vice goes off and produces this article where they attempt to take the moral high ground on a position that I would say is actually immoral. And the left does this all the time. And so they're going off and talking about Canada in this particular instance, going on Friday, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made clear that the temporary closure also applies to asylum seekers who cross the Canada-US border. Public Safety Minister Bill Blair justified the decision by characterizing them as non-essential travelers. But isn't seeking asylum in another country, having left behind an entire life because of war, persecution, famine, the most essential travel? The government has acknowledged there's no increased health risk from asylum seekers, and yet closed our borders to them anyway, fueling the myth that foreigners are inherently dangerous. The pandemic reignited the debate. Before these crossings were banned, Conservative Party leadership frontrunner Peter MacKay tweeted, "The government just confirmed they're allowing illegal border crossings instead of turning people away. We're letting them in and paying for their health care and quarantine. There are concerns about having enough equipment for our own citizens. This needs to stop now." Okay, so the left, they try to do this all the time, where they try to take the moral high ground on an immoral position. Now, I completely disagree with the premise of this. First of all, they go off and try to set up the premise that anybody seeking asylum is somebody who's trying to escape war, persecution, or famine. But in reality, the left has expanded the definition of asylum seekers to mean anybody from anywhere outside of your country coming to you for any particular reason, for any reason whatsoever. You know, whether they're just there to seek economic opportunities, that still classifies them as an asylum seeker. All right, now the second thing that I want to disagree with on this is about the moral responsibility, right? Because I disagree with the idea that the government has a moral responsibility to people outside of their country. In fact, the government's only moral responsibility is to the safety and security of their citizens. And we can take a look at this from the current crisis, or we could take a look at this, to any other issue. For instance, I was arguing back in 2008, before I even started getting online, publicly, with friends and family that, hey, we're in a time of high unemployment. We're in a recession. We can't even provide enough jobs for our own people. Why are we continuing immigration? And why are we continuing mass immigration? And why are we allowing illegal border crossings? And this is where we get to the part where the government is supposed to prioritize you, the people. Right? And now some of them go, where's your Christian values? Well, guess what? Christian values? How about this for the Bible? It says, take care of your own household first, or you have denied the faith and you're worse than an unbeliever. Because if you're not able to provide for your own people or your own citizens, you can't do a lot of good outside of your own home. You can't help people. Starving people can't feed starving children. Right? It takes being able to take care of yourself. And so when you're facing a crisis like we are globally right now, where countries are looking at their own citizens and going, we can't provide for your medical needs. We don't have enough ventilators. We don't have enough respirator masks. We don't have enough ICU beds. And now you have someone from another country showing up at your doorstep. You're not even sure you can take care of your own people, and you're supposed to be morally obligated to let this person in and take care of them as well? No. In a democracy, we have what's called representative government, where people run for office, on the claim that when elected, they're going to represent us. Now, I know this gets very twisted and very warped, where politicians are now believing that, when they run for office, they're dictating to us what it is they're going to advocate for and fight for. But in reality, running for public office should be, one agenda item. I'm going to listen to you and advocate for the policy positions that you want me to advocate for. That's all democracy should be about, right? And every politician, especially in the House of Representatives, has a set core of constituencies. And anybody outside of that constituency is not of their concern. Right? That's what representational government is supposed to be about. But if we go ahead and we go, okay, here's our choices between people that we want to represent us in government, to advocate for the issues that matter most to us. They get into office and then they ignore you, and then they go off and advocate for people who are from foreign lands, whether that's just south of the border, whether that's several countries in between, or whether that's the other side of the world. If they advocate for them over advocating for you, that is actually a dereliction of their duty. That is malfeasance, misfeasance. That is a situation in which they should be removed from office because they're not doing their job. And the left will do this all the time. They'll go off and say, it is unconscionable, at least here in the United States, that in the richest nation in the world, that there are homeless people and, that there are people living below the poverty line. And you go off and go, okay, so let's reduce immigration and cut off, illegal border crossings so that as jobs are created, there are jobs for the people in this country to move up into. And then they go, no, we can't do that. We can't do that. Why? Because they're always prioritizing illegal immigrants, or they're always prioritizing people from outside of the country over their own citizens. And that is what's wrong. The moral obligation is to the people, right? And, how do they get this confused? And in a time of crisis, the moral obligation of a government becomes even more evident. I mean, could you imagine a system in which, it's primarily set up that the people who pay the taxes are the people the government is set up to ignore, and that the people who, who have contributed nothing and have never once lived a single solitary minute in your country are the ones that your government is most concerned about prioritizing and spending all the money they're taking from you on, rather than providing for, public services, national defense, maintaining the roads or utilities or the infrastructure. No. They're letting all of that go to crap so that they can prioritize people of other nations. And this is what, is wrong with the left, because they can't argue, and debate their own positions. So they have to set up this false moral high ground, so that if you do not accept their premise, they don't have to debate you, right? Because they can't. They can just instead go, you're a horrible person, you're immoral, therefore your voice doesn't matter, your opinion doesn't matter, you don't get a say in this because you are evil. And take a look at this in any other context outside of government. Who are you more concerned about in a time of crisis? Your own spouse and kids? Or are you worried more about the person on the other side of town, right? Because when we take a look at our moral responsibilities, right, it starts with our most immediate circle, our family, right? Then our secondary priority, our community. Our third priority, our state. Our fourth priority, our country. And then our fifth priority, other people outside of the country. Probably our allies, and outside of our allies, our sixth priority is to take a look at other people. But if we can't provide for our own citizens, our own people, we cannot provide for the rest of the world. It's only the rich who have the excess capabilities of being able to generously contribute to improving the welfare of other people. But when you got a situation where you're low on the needs of your own people, you can't provide for that, right? There is no way to take care of other people, because all you're doing by accepting, asylum seekers, illegal immigrants, when you're unable to care for your own, is you're just setting yourself up to, in a situation that either you're just exchanging who you're going to let die. So let's say you let this person in, right? And they fall ill and they need an ICU bed. What do you do then? Do you let this person that you took in just die? In which case, what was the point of taking them in? Or are you going to take one of your own citizens, kick them out of their hospital bed, and replace it with this newly entered, foreign national who's only came to your country, and a lot of times, for economic opportunities, just to earn more money. It is very rare, to have someone, show up seeking asylum who actually meets the definition of asylum seeker. And so even if the person was trying to escape, as this tries to set up the premise of, war, persecution, or famine, right? Even if you accept that, then what do you do when you can't provide the needs for your own people? Are they still going to be suffering from famine because you decide that if you can only feed your own citizen or this foreign national, you pick your own citizen? Well, the person dies anyways. If this is a case of medical beds, again, setting up the situation with the ICU beds. If there's only one ICU bed and you have to make a choice between your own citizen and a foreign national who came up to you, asking help, who are you going to prioritize as a government? And as a politician who is elected to represent a certain group of people within a certain geographical area, what is your moral responsibility? I would say the moral responsibility is to the people from whom you are supposed to serve in your office, right? And so the entire premise of this, is false and wrong in so many ways from Vice. And they create, so many false, characterizations of what's going on here. And it's not that, foreigners are inherently dangerous. It's that we only have so much capacity, capability, and resources. This is why conservatives in the United States have been talking about the national debt forever. Here it is. We're racking up trillions upon trillions of dollars in debt. And a large part of that is to do foreign aid. Now we can debate percentages and what counts as a large part of that, but why is it that we're taking on debt that we're going to have to pay back with interest? That we are crushing our own citizens, their kids, financial future and future prosperity in order to do charitable giving. Whereas we would say, hey, let's cut spending, let's pay down the debt, and then from our abundance, go ahead and do our charitable giving then. I mean, would anybody go through, if this was a story or a narrative, that the media reports, person goes bankrupt doing charity for other people, talking about how they gave every last cent that they made, racked up all the credit cards, maxed them all out and went bankrupt in order to give to other people. Meanwhile, their own kids are in the basement malnourished and starving. Would we be celebrating that? Well, the rational person would be saying, no, we wouldn't be. Yet the left would say, yes, that's how we should do things. It is your moral responsibility to neglect your own household. It is your moral responsibility to neglect your family. It is your moral responsibility to neglect your country in order to serve everybody else, in order to serve those outside of your country. And that is actually morally wrong. But when it comes to morals, the left has it twisted and backwards. Just think about this, and apply it to any situation where you neglect your own family, on a personal level in order to benefit somebody else. Would we really praise that? That you fed, this child or these 3 kids down the street while your own kids were starving and malnourished in the basement, right? No one would celebrate that. We would be thinking, what the hell are you thinking? But yet, when it comes to a national level, people think that that is actually a good thing to do. Leave your own people malnourished, unable to take care of your own people, and neglect your own people in order to help the person out, down the street or, hundreds of miles away or from another country who, by the way, should have applied to other countries before they even got to you, because you're supposed to apply to the first country in which accepts asylum, the first safe country. Not pick and choose and cherry pick where you want to go and where you want to be, right? And so we got to also take a look at beggars can't be choosers. If you're going off and you're saying that you are fleeing, war, persecution, and famine. And you got these 3 other countries that you bypass that would be perfectly safe for you to be in. But you bypass them anyways, just because, you think that you would be able to, strike it rich in this other country. Well, then your situation was not really all that dire to begin with, was it? If you're cherry picking where you want to end up, your situation wasn't that dire. And I don't know how to make this clearer about how twisted, warped, and upside down the left's view of morality is. There are also the people that will say, my body, my choice, and then deny an infant, a baby, a fetus, the right to their body and their choice. When your rights have to go through, or when you claim that your moral responsibility involves you denying one person something that you claim is a right of another person, then your morals are screwed up. All right? And your morals are not actually moral positions. You're just trying to take a moral high ground in order to justify a political agenda. And that political agenda, in most cases when it comes to immigration or the so-called asylum seekers, is about you don't like how the voters react to things. You don't like that the voters don't support what it is you really want to do. You don't like that the voters won't give you that power that you desperately crave over their lives. And so now you're trying to flood the electorate and drown out the voices, dilute the voices with people who are not used to or accustomed to freedom and individual opportunities. And so you're looking to basically replace your voters so that you don't actually have to represent the people, but rather you get to do what you want and choose the people who vote for you to have more power. It's just like they screwed up morality, they screwed up the whole idea of politics and government. The politicians do not get to pick the voters. It's the voters who pick the politicians. And there is a responsibility out of that. And to do anything otherwise, to prioritize anybody outside of who you are elected to represent, that's immoral. And that is a grave dereliction of duty.